What is going on, Mullen fans? Welcome back to Financial Journey. So today I want to give you a good summary of what is happening with Mullen. And unfortunately, you guys might not want to hear it, but it is retail's fault. So I'm going to go over all the stuff you need to know. Make sure you guys hit that thumbs up and subscribe. I always greatly appreciate that. And without further ado, let's get right to it. I could already tell I probably did piss off some people by just saying that it's retail's fault, but let me explain. Technically, the sentiment right now is very much negative because of David. A lot of people are assuming that he's going to tweet absolutely everything out, and that isn't the case. Every other company that is out there that is very heavily retail based doesn't have the same interaction. So I think a lot of people have very high expectations of David, whereas maybe they need to lower them. Of course, I'm not a financial advisor, so do your own due diligence at the end of the day. But the mere fact is that it can go down roughly about 5.7%, largely just because of retail. And what I mean by that is shorts. So short score is currently 78, utilization is 100%, but shorts did return 3.03 million shares. So they take advantage. They basically take advantage of a lot of the negative articles that are coming out about Mullen, kind of ingrain the negative image of Mullen, and they return their shares. This is the life cycle of shorts, and unfortunately it does happen more commonly than not with very heavily retail stocks. And I absolutely really love Mullen. I know that they're going to do a lot of good things. I got into Mullen not necessarily because of it having a squeeze, but because of its fundamental business. And I personally feel that once again, a lot of retail investors are just playing with too much emotion. You need to look at the fundamental business and how big 2023 is going to be for Mullen, and maybe I'll do a separate video just on that alone. But 2023, surprisingly enough, is going to be very big for Mullen. So you need to realize that and stop paper handing. Stop giving shorts easy money, because in the grand scheme of things, Mullen is going to be a very big deal. My own interpretation, of course, but when it comes down to what happened on both the secondary market and dark pool, this is all the transactions today from the secondary market. So two transactions, 247 and 395,000. And when it comes down to, for instance, the options activity, I like to give you a good summary of this as well. For the most part, you can see shorts are not really hedging as much as they used to, whereas this one clearly is though, but the rest is actually just legitimate retail buying long term. And of course, a lot of people do see a lot of upside with Mullen, and I think a lot of long-term individuals who see the bigger picture are buying long-term calls with Mullen, not worrying about the short-term problems, about lack of PR or whatever it might be. They're thinking long-term, with the exception, like I said, of this one. This is clearly a short because alone, this is roughly about $53,000 in premiums and roughly about 5,000 call options being purchased, but still a hell of a lot of calls being purchased. And when it comes down to this, these are all the transactions on the dark pool, and it was fairly active today. So roughly about 6 or 7 transactions. So 6, 126, 103, 122, 250, 103, 103. So I think generally speaking, today was a little bit more of an abnormal situation, as you can tell based on the previous days. But what does the technical say? Because when it comes down to the data points, technicals does play a very big part in the grand scheme of things of where movement happens and so forth. And right now on the actual chart, it actually is wedged between the two Bollinger Bands, so the central and the higher percentile of that. So I think in general though, that's a good sign. Potentially could be trading between that roughly about 35 cents and 43 cents. Of course, in the past, it did fail to break outside the higher percentile of the Bollinger Band. And also stochastic right now is currently at 88, so potentially a little bit more overbought, might be due for a little bit more consolidation even further. So I think that's also aiding in why it did go down a little bit more today. Number of retail investors have been holding strong over the last couple of days, so that's definitely very optimistic to see. And I know a lot of people are just keep saying that Mullen is going to go down to 25 cents or whatever it is. In my opinion, that's not justifiable. It won't be going down unless there's some fundamental massive breakdown of everything. And of course that could happen, but I think the likelihood isn't necessarily there. And most likely it is going to be next week. That's when the big players in Mullen are all going to be disclosing their positions, such as, for instance, BlackRock, Vanguard, and so forth. So when retail does see that, typically that does cause a rally. During Q3, when BlackRock did in fact disclose their position, as with Vanguard, it caused Mullen to go up, if I remember correctly, around 15%. So clearly a lot of value is sought out when that does happen. So let me know your thoughts on all of that in the comments below. If you haven't already, hit that thumbs up and subscribe. I always greatly appreciate that. If you do like my Mullen content and want to support the channel, take a look at my memberships, link in the description below, or just hit the join button at the bottom of the screen. With that said, appreciate you guys watching. Let's all make a lot of money on Mullen.